Hello, class. This morning, it's actually Sunday morning, February 23rd. I'm recording this lecture. It's the fifth lecture for our online class. It's the third on different media types. You should have viewed all the lecture and completed the quiz, etc. by 5 o'clock on Friday, February 28th. Our agenda is to talk about, not to talk about that, hang on, there we go. Direct mail, first of all. We're finishing up with print, and direct mail is a key part of print. Nowhere near the spending level of big media types, but nevertheless should be looked at. Then we'll get into some detail into magazines, particularly, obviously, here in the U.S. And then finally, at the end, we'll talk about what's coming up in the next class, which will be our first class about electronic media, and we'll start with radio. So this is print. Again, we've already talked about newspapers. It's definitely the case with the two types we're talking about today, direct mail and even particularly magazines, that print does have staying power. Particularly with a magazine that you paid for, you're not liable to toss it too quickly. Some people keep magazines a lot longer than they should. The other thing you get with, particularly with magazines, is pass-along readership, where you give a copy of a magazine that you like with an article that you like to a friend. Very strong, the best color reproduction really in magazines and direct mail catalogs that you can find anywhere. That includes all electronic media. You're never really guaranteed of completely accurate color reproduction. How many times have you gone to look at new TV sets in your favorite department store or wherever you look at TV sets? Of course, now you're probably just buying them online, which is even worse. You're looking at a computer screen's depiction of a television screen's color reproduction. And if you've ever been in a store, and I'm sure you have, just getting back to the store retail story here, you see the difference in color reproduction. One screen looks a little too green, another's a little too red, etc. But with print and magazines, it's done. It's set. It's very, very high quality and very controllable by art directors. With magazines, you also have a very strong fan base and readership in most occasions. And this, particularly if you're a long-term advertiser in the magazine, you're there kind of in every issue. This has a rub-off, kind of an approval rub-off on you. And if you can get public relations and editorial coverage of your product or service, of course, even more so, because the credibility goes way up. One of the issues with magazines is, will your ad actually be seen, particularly in some of these long magazines. And not everyone reads every page of a magazine, so your ad may be missed. It can be avoidable. Magazines have websites too these days, so typically whenever you look at how a magazine is selling itself, that you've got the print edition and you have the website. With the print editions of magazines, you still have a relatively long lead time. So when your creative is done and submitted to the magazine, probably isn't going to show up in many cases for another month or two. And then with the direct mail, we are going to talk about classic formats, catalogs, and group mailers mainly. And we're actually going to start with direct mail. And we've already talked about coupons, newspapers, etc. So direct mail. Well, does that look like your mailbox for a busy day or a busy week, or maybe where you grew up? That's the mailbox. When you're growing up with someone who's probably on a lot of mailing lists and in a lot of databases, particularly at certain times of year, like fourth quarter holidays, boy, that old mailbox can get pretty full. But guess what? Probably not as full as your email inbox. And here is a hint as to why direct mail has maintained and in some cases even increased in popularity, even among internet retailers, e-tailers. I always like definitions. Direct mail is defined as unsolicited advertising sent to prospective customers through the mail. Right? They didn't buy the direct mail piece. This is a prospecting device trying to get you to open the envelope and then get hooked in the contents and respond. So if you looked at a purchase funnel, by the way, which I don't have a lot of purchase funnels in this presentation, unfortunately, I'm kind of missing it right now, you'd basically see that a classic direct mail piece is going to take you from, and think about the steps of the purchase funnel. Remember, our acronym for the purchase funnel is ACAPELLA. So you open a piece of direct mail, you're going to go through awareness, consideration, preference, all the way to purchase if the piece is successful. So it's really like an infomercial. Okay, a long infomercial is really trying to do the same thing. It's got offers in it, as direct mail piece pretty much always has an offer, and the offer is the final incentive to get you to buy. Now we're going to look at these 4 basic designs. Well, here's a little froggy self-mailer, and this little piece is die cut to look like a frog, and there's nothing to open. It's just everything is right there. Catches your attention, hopefully, because it's a little bit of a different shape in your mail. If you like frogs with eyelashes particularly, you're going to keep it. And you look at the back, and it's going to quickly tell you the story and then give you some kind of response device. Phone number to call, a website to go to, or maybe a perforated thing you can tear off and send back. Now, when we talk about standard direct mail, one of the most important pieces in the direct mail piece is the envelope, if not the most important. Because the envelope, just like the subject line in an email, has to get you to want to read what's inside. This is why most cases see there's an offer, whatever the offer is, it's put on the envelope to make you think it's something of value you want to find out more about. This is the classic direct mail package. The outer envelope we talked about, where you've got the offer displayed, and its job is to get you to, in the 7 seconds you typically averagely take to make up your mind about any piece of mail, you're going to decide to keep it and or open it. There's a letter, and the letter's addressed to you and personalized, and letters are to always have highlighted pieces that kind of step you through. You just kind of, your first reading of the letter is just to bounce from highlight to highlight, not to read all the details. And the highlights are designed to repeat the offer, say why this is a good idea for you. And then if you're kind of snagged by it, you may end up reading the letter and then get more involved in the story of whatever they're trying to sell you. The brochure normally is a color piece, and the brochure's job is to bring to life whatever it is that's being sold and show you pictures of people enjoying whatever it is, or show you pictures of whatever the object is they're selling so that you can see what you'll be buying, but it's to provide a visual mostly. A lift note is typically, it's been found that direct mail pieces with lift notes are more successful. And lift note is just something that doesn't quite fit the size of everything else, and it just kind of falls out and sits there, and it's asking you to pick it up and look at it, and usually repeats an offer. And then you've got your reply or your response device, which kind of sums everything up and gives you a place to respond. This is the thing, if you were going to keep anything from the mailing, it's probably going to be this, and you throw out everything else. So the whole mailing story has to be here. And direct mail, by the way, is measurable, accountable media. And a lot of what we look at in our review of media types, we don't talk about accountability, but direct mail is judged on whether or not it creates sales results. Okay, not awareness, not impressions, but sales results. The same with catalogs. Catalogs, vital and productive format. Catalogs are mailed out to people who are in databases. and they're used not just for consumer products, but also in business-to-business sales. Catalogs are often used. Here's the definition of catalog. So, of course, you've got the catalog of a band song. You've probably heard of that. And then it's a complete enumeration of items arranged systematically with descriptive details, a catalog of the company's products. That's kind of what we're talking about here with catalog. And catalogs go back. I mean, if we're doing a history of magazines coming up, a history of catalogs would be another interesting thing to look at. And I can tell you for sure that the Sears Roebuck Company, now known as Sears, which is almost out of business, I think they've declared bankruptcy, if not they're close to it, began as a catalog company. They mailed large product catalogs out to people all over the country, particularly in the Midwest, where there weren't a lot of stores to buy things. And they sold dishes and dresses and shirts and jackets. In fact, you could even buy a whole house from a Sears catalog back in the 1800s, in the 19th century. Company that's been immensely successful with catalogs. You've probably heard of these guys as L.L. Bean since 1912. Here's an old catalog from 2006. But again, a couple things here. One is that the catalog, the front of the catalog needs to get you to keep and want the catalog. And that's why you'll often see an offer on the front, or you'll see a new product mentioned, see page 3. Product they think is going to be very popular for them. They'll kind of point you to that. If it's a new product, you'll want to open that up. And L.L. Bean is a real lifestyle brand. You know, it's an outdoors brand. It's based in Maine, and it's really a lot of it's about Maine, products for people who like to be outdoors and casual wear. It started as hunting wear and expanded well beyond that. Now, this one I want to have a little time with this. These are a couple of pages from the J. Peterman Company catalog. This is another catalog company that came along in the 80s and the 90s, and it's out of business now. And it was I actually knew the fellow who was the real guy who was the creative genius behind J. Peterman. His name was Don Staley. I actually hired him when I ran marketing at 1-800-Flowers. He worked for me for only a couple of months, but he was really delightful. At that point, he was, I would say he was maybe 5'8" or 9. He was a little bit on the rotund side with a big white beard, drove an old Mercedes diesel, always dressed interestingly, and I paid him a lot of money to be a creative consultant when we were restaging the 800-Flowers Company prior to going public back in 1999. J. Peterman had just gone bust. Don was looking for gigs. Now, J. Peterman was a catalog company. Don found a lot of the garments and items that were sold in J. Peterman. It's another lifestyle kind of point of view kind of catalog. And the reason I'm focusing on this is the way that Don sold the products, I think, kind of points up some of the strengths of print as a medium that can persuade. So let's just look at this Côte d'Azur, 1929. Côte d'Azur is, right, it's the, what the heck's it called? You know, the Mediterranean, where Prince Rainier was and Princess Grace, and it's beautiful, small country there right on kind of the coast of France. So Don found these products. Now, Don never showed photographs of the products. He didn't show people wearing the products. He just showed the products. And I think it's because he wants us to imagine ourselves wearing them, okay? And but the most special thing about his catalog was the copy. And the copy, I'm just going to read this one. Maybe you've been reading it already, but it's a lifestyle copy that gets the imagination engaged. Côte d'Azur 1929 silk palazzo pants, okay, now $54. Days of gossip and sunbathing, green figs and Pernod, which is a fancy European liqueur, by the way. What did you think of the party at Maum's?